Hi, my name is Davalbhakta, and with me today is Charlotte Lichtenfeld. We both attend Johns Creek High School. I'm currently in 10th grade, and Charlotte is in 11th grade. We're both first-year students in Student Leadership Johns Creek and members of the Secretary of State Ambassador team. I've been given the opportunity to introduce one of our biggest program supporters and a resident of Johns Creek, Miss Lynne Riley. Miss Riley is currently the president of the Georgia State Finance Commission. Miss Riley was appointed the first female state treasurer in May of 2019. She was also appointed as a state revenue commissioner in 2015. She has served 4 years in the General Assembly representing House District 50. She served as one of the Governor Deal's floor leaders in 2014 and has been very influential in many different committees. These are just a few of her many accomplishments. Now I'll let her take the screen and talk about the state fiscal administration.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Ty, thank you so much for that great introduction, and I'm delighted to be with all of you today. My name is Lynne Riley. I've lived in Johns Creek for over 30 years. All 3 of my children went to Chattahoochee High School, and I'm proud grandma now and looking forward, although they don't live in Johns Creek, looking forward to them receiving the same great academic experiences that you are and my kids did in your pursuits right now in Johns Creek. I'm going to talk today about the journey that I've had in public service and stop a couple of points along the way in the different roles that I've served and provide some insights on the things that I've learned along the way, and then look forward to hearing from you some thoughts on the things that we do here in government to add value to your education. So I'm going to try to share my screen right now. And if I need help, I hope the team will assist. I've put up in front of you a PowerPoint that starts off with reflections on state government, and I'll talk from that. I think we'll move forward as quickly as we can. The first slide that I'm showing now, the public service journey that I've taken over the past 15, 16 years. Most of my career prior to getting into public service was in the private sector as an accountant. My career was focused on helping taxpayers provide the right information when they were filing federal and state and in some cases local taxes, and ensuring that they were compliant with all of the laws and regulations that go along with that. And as you all know, taxes are a critical part of our world economy. Governments run based on the taxes that are raised from the population. And it's very important that folks follow the laws that are written in taxation to ensure they pay the correct amount of tax, no more, no less, and so that we make the tax burden on the population equitable. I served a period of time as Fulton County Commissioner, and I'm not going to stay on that topic because I know Commissioner Hausman will be speaking to you later today, and she succeeded me in the seat that I held. And she's been there coming up 10 years now and has performed phenomenally. And she'll be able to give you some key insights on county government leadership. But after serving as a county commissioner for a little over 6 years, I was lucky enough to join the General Assembly as a legislator. And Governor Deal did me the great honor in 2015 of appointing me to serve as the state revenue commissioner. In 2019, Governor Kemp asked me to jump over to the state treasury and administer the public dollars that the state is responsible for. And then in July of this year, when a vacancy was needed to be filled at the Student Finance Commission, I was approached to see if I had an interest, and I was delighted to accept. And I'll speak a little bit more about that because I think it's going to be important to all of you to understand exactly what we do here at Student Finance. So as a state legislator, my key focus was fiscal and tax policy. I spent the greatest amount of my time on the Ways and Means Committee, which is in charge of all of that tax policy and the development of tax law for the state of Georgia. This slide reflects the progress of a piece of legislation. Creation of a concept that might be introduced in the General Assembly generally comes either from constituents or from advocacy from an interest group, and is usually brought to the attention of members of the General Assembly and advocated for by them for the General Assembly to consider. Generally, a sponsor will be identified and will take ownership of developing the text of a bill that will be introduced in the General Assembly. And after it moves through the legislative process, which I hope at some point you'll have the opportunity to observe, because it's quite a lengthy process going from introduction through committee hearings, through consideration on the floor of each chamber, the House and the Senate. And ultimately, it makes its way to the governor's desk for consideration. And should the governor agree with the policy, it will be signed into law. Following the signature of a bill, implementation has to be considered. And particularly as far as tax policy, that would mean the development of regulations, rules, and procedures. And tax policy that is being implemented, any regulations that are created, must be taken out for public comment prior to enactment. So there was a whole second set of deliberation and evaluation of a policy after it's been adopted in law to ensure that it is administered appropriately. And then, of course, after a law has been in place and has been implemented and administered for a while, it always is wise to evaluate and ensure that that program is performing as was anticipated when the law was passed. So study committees by members of the General Assembly or audits that are performed to evaluate the outcomes. And of course, those that are affected by the policy will tend to weigh in and let folks know. We also relied heavily as state legislators on collaboration with other legislators across the nation. Many national organizations are available to state legislators for learning of best practices, sharing ideas, and investigating outcomes of policies that may have been implemented in other states. So in 2015, when I moved over into the Department of Revenue, the primary responsibility there is to bring the dollars in to the state that provide for the service delivery of all of the state agencies that serve us. Of course, the largest agency is the Department of Education. Over 50% of the revenues collected and utilized in state government are for education. But this slide depicts the different areas of revenue collections. And I'm going to stop now because I forgot that we were going to try to do a poll during our presentation. So I see that a poll question has been put up for you to answer, and I'm talking through it. But the question is, what is the total budget for the state of Georgia for fiscal year 2021, which began in July of 2020? And I see that somebody's figured out how to answer the question. So we've got a few more seconds. Well, actually, they've extended the time. So it looks like you have close to 20 more seconds maybe to answer this question. And I'll hold while you're weighing in, and then I'll provide the answer when the poll closes. And my apologies to the moderators that I jumped ahead before you put up the poll. Looks like most have jumped in, so if you want to close the poll down, I'll go ahead and give you the answer. Well, it looks like 31% of you knew the answer. The correct answer was $52.5 billion. Half of it is federal funding, and the Department of Revenue is, oh, do we want to go ahead and close the poll down?
It's closed.
All right, do we want to shut the screen down? Because it's on my display, it's in front of my slide.
Is it off now?
Oh, I've got it off. It allowed me to put it down. Apologies. So as I said, that of that 52.5 billion, about half of it comes from federal pass-through funding that is also utilized for state services. But about half of that 50, about 25-ish, is collected by the Department of Revenue. And of that amount, about half of it comes from income tax, individual and corporate income tax. Sales tax is another fairly good portion of state revenue collections. And then some smaller amounts for the total state revenue collections for motor vehicle, alcohol, tobacco, hotel, motel fees, and others sources of revenue that are much smaller in amount. Other roles that the Department of Revenue plays is to oversee the enforcement of state tax laws and administer programs that apply to revenue collection. We also would collaborate with other fiscal agencies. The Governor's Office of Budget and Planning we would work closely with to make sure that the monies that we were collecting at the Department of Revenue were in line with what had been budgeted and adopted by the General Assembly for an annual budget. So it was very important that we were always sharing information and planning together to ensure that there were sufficient dollars at all times available to pay for the programs that the state was delivering on. Again, you see the word collaboration. The Department of Revenue and all departments of revenue across the country work together, and all our participants and members of a national association of revenue departments, and again work together to share best practices, to learn from each other, to evaluate each other's unique ways of collecting revenue, because each state has very different tax laws. As many of you may know, the state of Tennessee does not have an income tax, and so they focus much more of their administration on sales tax collections. Other states are less dependent on any type of income tax at all, or sales tax. They are lucky enough to have revenue streams from other resources, natural resources such as oil and gas, and they tax those industries for the natural resources that are removed from their environments, and their revenue stream comes from that source. So I'll move to the next, well, I hope I'm not able to be moving the, my screen is frozen up and I'm having trouble moving the slide. I don't know whether I need to stop sharing and try again, but I'm not getting any functionality. Is there another poll question to come up, or?
I would try unsharing and resharing. That might help.
All right, well, somebody's asking to grab my screen, so I'm gonna see if that works. Well, it looks like I may have some functionality now. Yep, let me see if this will, you can see. It looks like I was able to advance. Again, apologies to the audience that. Oh, well, we've got another, we'll let you answer this question. What was the state's revenue shortfall reserve or rainy day fund as of June 30, 2019? And be sensitive about that date. June 30, 2019 was well over a year ago. And the reason why I asked this question is because the final calculation for the rainy day fund as of June 30, 2020 is still being evaluated. Well, we close our fiscal year at June 30 in the state. It takes quite some time to close the books and determine exactly what we had as a total reserve at year end. So that number hasn't been finalized at this point. So when I asked this question and put it together, the last amount that we had confirmed as reserves for the state was as of June 30, 2019. Let's give it another 5 seconds or so, and then we'll close the poll and I'll give you the answer.
Do you want to move to the next slide?
On the PowerPoint, yes, please. And then let's go ahead. Have we closed the polling on this question? It looks like if I share the results, whoops. Can everybody see? I hope everybody can see the polling results. The answer that received the greatest amount of responses was 1.4 billion, and that is not correct. The correct answer is 3.1 billion. The state of Georgia has a reputation for being very fiscally prudent, and I just saw a press release from the governor's office a couple of hours ago that said that for 8 years in the row, which is unprecedented, the state of Georgia has received the distinction of being the best state in the nation to do business. And one of the major reasons is that we are very fiscally responsible. And being fiscally responsible means that you've always got money put away for a rainy day or something unexpected happening. And the 3.1 billion cushion that we had at year end in June of 2019 has helped us weather this pandemic. The governor's been very wise in adjusting our budget as we went along this past year when the pandemic hit, and asked us all to be very careful about spending the monies that were provided to each agency, because we want to make sure that we always have enough to educate our citizens, to provide for their health and welfare and their safety. So 3.1 billion is a good size reserve. The governor's been very prudent in managing our budget, even through the pandemic, and we've been very fortunate that we've not had to use hardly any of that rainy day fund to get us where we are even today. This screen that I have before you is a little complicated, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it reflects how we had to evolve during the pandemic. In March, when we went into the shutdown, the federal government decided to extend the normal tax filing deadline of April 15th into July. And of course, that affected state government as well, not only ours, but all our other state peers. And for the first time, we had to consider that if the folks who pay taxes normally when tax day comes on April 15th had not paid, then they were given an extension to wait until July to make those tax payments. Well, July 15th is after the end of our fiscal budget year. And we recognized very quickly that those monies were going to come in after we closed out our books. So in conjunction with the Department of Revenue, we, again, as I mentioned earlier, with the coordination amongst all fiscal agencies at the state, we recognized it was important for us to make some modifications on how the Department of Revenue presents monthly and year-to-date revenue collections. So this slide reflects the fact that in July of this year, we had to recognize that some of the money that came in July was really for the previous year's budget. And so this just is an illustration of how we had to adapt to recognize how revenues may have been paid after the fact, but we had to consider them as revenues for the year in which that we had originally budgeted. So I would say the bottom line message there is that those of us that are charged with financial management had to make a lot of changes and accommodate what 2020 threw at us as well, while others were managing public health and making sure everybody's health was number one, and teachers and educators were making sure that education delivery was number one. We were making sure there was money in the bank that was sufficient to provide all of these services to each and every one of you. My screen isn't advancing again. If somebody can help me get to the next slide. Can we move to the next slide? There we go. Thank you. When I moved over to the role of state treasurer in May of 2019, I no longer was helping the Department of Revenue team collect state monies. At the state treasury, we invested those state monies. So this is a list of the different ways we serve in state treasury. One, it was very important for us to make sure that every penny that came in from the Department of Revenue or from any other source was put into a bank and properly protected. And then any money that was going to stay with us for longer than a short period of time, we put into different investment vehicles. And we also would take responsibility for our local government's funds. Your local school board, Fulton County Board of Education, would send money that they didn't need to spend immediately, but might need 6 or 8 months from now, or even maybe even longer. They would send that to the state treasury, and we would pool that with other local funds into what we call the local government investment pool, and be able to invest in different strategies that would provide a greater return, earn more money on this collectively larger sum that provided for better returns on investment for all of the local governments. We also had to make sure that all of our agencies that were paying out funds, whether it might be for public health services or for other benefits, unemployment benefits or things of that nature, our agencies would have banking relationships with commercial banks in Georgia, and the state treasurer's office was responsible in making sure that all of the rules were adhered to in public fund administration, and also making sure that the service charges and all of the other fees that might go along with banking at a commercial bank were watched over to ensure that we were, again, making sure we weren't being anything but very good stewards of public dollars. The Path to College 529 program I'll speak about in a moment, because that's something that I deal with here at Public Service Commission, Student Finance Commission. The Georgia ABLE program is similar to the Path to College program. It's a savings vehicle for the disabled population in Georgia, which allows them to save money tax-free. You'll see collaboration again on this screen a couple of times. It was very important as state treasurer that I was in close collaboration with the Governor's Office of Budget and Planning, as well as collaborating with the Department of Revenue and other fiscal agencies to make sure we had a very seamless flow of funds from the Department of Revenue into Treasury, and then back out to the agencies when they needed to make payroll or to expend dollars for services that they're providing. Next slide, please. I don't know if we have another poll question. We have another one coming up? Well, whenever we do, go ahead and pop that up on the screen. I apologize for not remembering the sequence that we had those available for you today. Some of the challenges I spoke about during the pandemic that the combined fiscal agencies had to be concerned about was making sure the money was where it needed to be, properly accounting for it. But one of the interesting things that we had to deal with when I was at Treasury was the Federal CARES Act that authorized $3.5 billion of funds to be sent to the state of Georgia to provide for those businesses and individuals that were put out of work and lost their ability to generate revenue. And so federal funding was provided to us. Federal funds generally are only provided to the state after the state has expended them for a reason, and then the feds will reimburse the state for anything that they spend. In this case, this money came to us before the state had spent the money. And so this created a very unique challenge at Treasury, because we overnight had to find a place for $3.5 billion to be safely placed. And that had never been something that had been asked of us before. Generally, our revenue collections are anticipated, and we will work with commercial banks and investment firms to have, be prepared to place public funding, knowing when it was coming to us. But when $3.5 billion came to us, we were scratching our heads, because we had to say, never before had we been struggling with having too much money and not knowing where to put it. Always, it was the reverse, where we were worrying about where the money was going to come from. But again, with collaboration and with working closely with our commercial banks and with our investment partners, we were able to securely put these monies on deposit, because one of the most important state laws that we had to abide by at State Treasury is that all public money must be collateralized. That means that if a bank takes $1 billion from the state treasurer, they have to pledge $1 billion of their assets to guarantee that that public money is protected. And that's not always an easy thing to do. Someday I can give a full presentation on just the challenges of collateralization and protecting public dollars, but I won't go there today. But the message is that that challenge was something that the state treasury had never been presented with before, and we had to, switch gears quickly in April while we were working remotely, while we were also juggling, health and safety, and trying to keep all of our other activities going. But, very proud to say that with, the talented folks that are at Treasury, at Revenue, and all the other fiscal agencies, we worked together, spoke with other states, and all determined our best way forward to make sure that we protected every penny. I'm going to ask you to move to the next slide, and I think we've got another poll question coming up. This question is, Georgia is one of how many states to secure a AAA bond rating in 2020 from the 3 ratings agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and S&P? We'll give a few seconds for each of you to weigh in, see if you know the correct answer to this question. As I mentioned earlier, I just saw this morning that 8 years in a row we've been recognized as the best state to do business. And again, that reflects on the entire state network of agencies, good service delivery, great fiscal management, and dedication in making sure that we provide for our citizens and provide those prosperity opportunities. I see that the majority of the poll respondents chose the right answer on this one. We are one of 9 states to have secured the highest rating for fiscal responsibility. This results in one of the lowest borrowing rates of interest, so that when the state of Georgia goes out to borrow money for projects that we do not have enough short-term funding to provide for, we get a very, very favorable rate, which saves our taxpayers money. Imagine if we weren't so fiscally prudent, we might be paying 8 or 9 or 10% interest on any money we borrow. But when the state went out to borrow money this summer in August, the rates that we are paying on borrowings that were taken at that time are below 3%, which is much more in line with current realities in our fiscal economy today. And so again, it's reflective of great fiscal management. So I'm going to close this poll question, or maybe we can go back a screen and maybe help me close the poll question. Okay, I'm back on the right PowerPoint slide. Can someone shut down the poll question, please? Here at Georgia Student Finance Commission, our job is to disperse funds to recipients. Oh, I was able to do it. Thank you. The Georgia Student Finance Commission was established in 1965, and it was put into place to be able to administer scholarship programs to students here in Georgia. In our current fiscal year, our program budget is over $1 billion. Now, of all of that money, only 10 million of all of that is for us to do our job. All the rest of that is for scholarships, grants, and loans to be provided out in the fiscal year to recipients in Georgia. And our mission is to make sure that we are providing financial access for all Georgians to education beyond high school. Could we go to the next slide, please? Can we get to slide 9, please? There we go. This is just a quick chart to show all of the different HOPE programs, which I imagine most of you are familiar with. We manage the HOPE Scholarship and the Zell Miller Scholarship Program. But under that, we have, as you can see, a number of different sub-programs. Most of you have heard of HOPE Scholarship. The Zell Miller Scholarship was created more recently to provide for a greater degree of scholarship award for the highest achievers that meet a higher level of merit in their high school studies, as well as more rigorous courses and test scores on the SAT or ACT. The HOPE Grant and Zell Miller Grant and the HOPE Career Grant programs are provided for those that choose to pursue secondary education, post-secondary education at the technical college system in Georgia. And our HOPE GED grant is also available for those that are seeking to complete their high school education. We do have another poll question come up, so if we can bring that up and then advance the PowerPoint to the next slide, please. This last question is, do you have a Path to College 529 plan account for your higher education needs? We'll let that stay open for a couple of minutes, and there's no right or wrong answer on this one. I'm just curious on whether you know whether you have one or whether someone has opened one for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that after we close the poll. I'll give it about 5 more seconds and then you can close it. Well, I'm glad to see there's 10 of you that know that you have one. I hope that there's more that actually do, but if after today, I hope that we might be closer to all of the respondents that will consider taking the opportunity and the advantage of the 529 plan. I'll speak about that in just a minute. I'm going to This slide, in addition to the Hope Scholarship and program that I talked about on the previous screen, we do offer a number of other grant and loan programs. And all of this information is available on our website. And I'm speaking to you today, I hope that you will take the time to go to our website, because now is the right time for those of you that might be sophomores and juniors to be doing your research and thinking about how you can best take advantage of all of the opportunities there are available to you for financial assistance in your higher education. Could we go to the next slide, please? Next one after, there we go. This is another list of things that we do here at Student Finance. Not only, as I said, we spend about $10 million for the folks that are here working with me to administer all these programs, but we assist high school students with FAFSA completion, and I hope all of you know what that stands for, the free application for federal student aid. And if any of you are thinking of entering college next year, the FAFSA is a requirement for you to complete in order to be eligible for HOPE or Zell or other scholarships that we administer here at Student Finance. So now's the time to be working on that. It's also a critical component on understanding all of the other potential aid opportunities that you might have available to you as you look to plan the financing of your higher education career. Our website, georgiafutures.org, is a self-service platform for you to be able to work with the Student Finance Commission on preparing yourself for the financial needs for post-secondary education. But here at Student Finance, we also start doing our educational outreach as early as kindergarten. If we have the opportunity, we will start there in helping our students understand the realities of post-high school financial aid needs and opportunities, and help them plan well ahead to be able to be ready to pay for that college career. We also do have a loan option here at Student Finance, and so we provide services for borrowers to repay their loans after they finish their education. I highlighted the Path to College 529 plan because that is something that I have had involvement with at the Department of Revenue, because the investment in a Path to College 529 plan is tax advantaged, and all investments in a Path to College 529 plan account, all earnings are tax-free, whereas if you put money for college in a regular savings account, as you earn interest or appreciation on that investment, that interest or appreciation is taxable. If you put these monies in a Path to College plan, they are not taxable. And when you withdraw them to pay for your eligible student expenses at a college or university, that is a tax-free transaction. So you can maximize the amount you're saving for college and not have to pay tax on it. Also in Georgia, for those that make contributions into a Georgia Path to College 529 account, there is a tax deduction on their state tax return. So we spend a lot of time promoting that benefit to parents, grandparents, and this is something that you might want to look into and tell your relatives when they're looking for a useful gift for you as you're getting ready for college. That is something that will last you a lifetime would be an investment in your higher education. And if they invest in your Path to College 529 account, they will be able to get a tax deduction for doing so. So not only would they be gifting you a benefit of less debt for higher education, but they will be getting a benefit themselves. And I hope that you'll look into this a little bit further. Again, our website has all that information. But I think you'll find that if you start early in your planning, that you'll find that your higher education is affordable when you take advantage of all of these different paths that we will provide you access to here at Student Finance Commission. We also are looking to promote financial literacy in every opportunity. So if you are aware of audiences that we can get before, we have done some outreach programs at some of the high schools in Johns Creek, but we will never shy away from an opportunity to get before a virtual or a someday again in-person audience to be able to advise you on the options you might have to be able to maximize those savings and all of the resources that'll get you the best education you could possibly hope for. I think that wraps up my PowerPoint presentation. And I will underscore again that I will be happy to talk individually. You can see my contact information there. But we want to make sure that you have all the resources you need as you pursue your college education. And even after you leave high school, we are always available as you go through college to be your assistant in ensuring that you get what you need for financial resources as you pursue your college education. So if we want to, you can go ahead and shut this down, and I'm ready to take questions in the last few minutes before I will allow you to move on with your program.
Yes, so thank you. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to put in the chat or just speak as well. But if not, we'll just wrap up with a few questions. I'll ask a few.
Well, I'm ready whenever you are, Charlotte.
All right, I think let's go. So why did you seek to be in an elected office?
Well, quite frankly, I really never thought my entire life that I would ever want to hold elected office. But back in the early 2000s, my children were, my two oldest were already in college. My son was in middle school, and an opportunity arose. And I recognized, like many others that you'll hear today, that being part of a community means taking active participation in developing the rules, the laws, and the way you want your community to move forward. And when that opportunity arose, I did a little soul searching and said, why not? And I've never regretted a day of it. It's been a wonderful journey. I learn every day in each of the roles that I've held. I've learned something new, and every day I learn something new, and I'm loving the ability to be able to partner and serve so that your futures will be a little bit better for it.
And what has been your greatest challenge in a public service role?
I think getting used to speaking publicly. I still, even after all this time, get a little bit of stage fright. And it gets a little easier over time, but I still worry that I'm not conveying well, or that I might have, a brain freeze or get tongue-tied. And so that stage fright just never seems to go away. But I've learned to try to overcome that by feeling confident in the information that I'm trying to share. And then also remembering that we're just all people, and sometimes everybody has a little trouble communicating, but we get through it.
All right, well, I think we have time for one more question. So which public service role has been your favorite?
That's really hard to say. I've enjoyed, as I said a minute ago, all of them, because they've all given me a different perspective on what it takes to provide public service. And from all of my time providing taxpayers help with, filling out their returns and making sure they did the right thing. And then getting into the policy area where we're making law that folks have to follow. And then, as a revenue commissioner, having to tell people that they've got to follow the law. And then as a treasurer, recognizing that we have to have those laws to be able to pay the bills. And now I will say that here at Student Finance Commission, it really is a joy to be able to see that all of the work of collecting all that money and preserving it provides this opportunity to be able to pay it back out to our students to be able to use for them to be the next generation of public leaders.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for today. And I know you're going to have a great time with the rest of the speakers today.
Thank you.